welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tina Zink and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! And I live in Nova Scotia, Canada. And to all of my friends who are returning, welcome back. Today is -10 and it is beautiful blue skies and sunshine, but it's definitely a day I want to stay inside where it's warm and cozy and do some fun creating in my stamp room. And I want to share with you a technique called out of the box technique using our stamps and dies. This past weekend I had a Zoom hour with my team called Techniques and Tea, and members of my Serene Stampers community and I get together and I demonstrate a fun technique, and then we spend the rest of the hour creating cards and having our tea and visiting. It's a lot of fun, and I showed them this out of the box technique and they loved it. So I hope that you do too. I can't wait to share it with you. So let's get stamping. In today's video, I'm actually going to make a few different cards using this out of the box die technique, and the reason being is A, it is so much fun, and B, I want to show you how you can use your different stamps with this technique, and hopefully it will inspire you to give this a try yourself at home. So I'm going to use the Sweet Strawberry stamp set with the Berry Blessings on one card. And this stamp set is free right now during celebration with beautiful Designer Series paper to coordinate. This is in our new mini catalog. And then here's another celebration stamp set called Darling Donkeys. I'm sure many of you have seen this around. If you haven't already gotten it yet, it's precious. And then this is a great stamp set for this technique as well. And this is called Silhouette Scenes. It is in our annual catalog. So I am going to, actually I'll go ahead and start with Silhouette Scenes. And I'm just using our basic white paper for all of these cards. Now I want the stamp to be really, really dark with the ink. So I'm going to use my Stamparatus, and I'm going to use this one right here. And these cards are all going to be done on the fly. So I'm designing as I go. So I'm not sure what die I'm going to be using yet. All right, put that down. My black Stays On ink. Now I'm going to figure out which die I want to use. So I've decided to use my Sweetly Stitched dies. Now I actually just got this set of dies. Oh my goodness, you guys, I don't know what took me so long to get these dies. They are fabulous. Put these back. These were used on my last card using this out of the box technique, and I will show that to you at the end of the video. So now all you do is you position your die to determine what pieces of that stamp you want to pop outside of the die, which is why it's called the out of the box technique. So I am going to have part of the umbrella pop out the top. So I'm just going to center this down by the feet, and then what I'm going to do is place this down. So I'm just going to take my pencil and go inside the die and just lightly trace it. And then the part that's going to be cut out, I'm just going to take my pencil and just kind of go on the outside bit, just that way I can see that this is the piece that's going to come out. So I'm going to take my scissors, I'm going to start here, and I'm just cutting on the outside bit where that die would be. Okay, so now that I've got my umbrella cut, so you can see I've gone right underneath here because I could follow the pencil mark so I can see where my die needs to line up. Okay, so I know it's not lining up perfectly with my pencil marks, and that's totally fine. That was just to try to give me an idea of where everything was going to be. And so I'm just lining this up, and now I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. My #1 platform, my #2 plate, my very well used and scratched up clear plate, and then I'm just going to position this down, and again just lining it up because I wanted to have these feet kind of centered with the bottom. Everything's lined up at the top. I think that's good. And now put my top plate on and just run that through. And let me show you what you get. Look at that. So the umbrella is outside of the die and everything else is cut perfectly. So now I'm just going to take my eraser and just erase around the lines. Isn't that fun? So if you have stamp images that are too big for your dies, you can still use the dies and just have that image come outside of the die. So now it's time to put this card together. So I'm going to use this die. And this Designer Series paper is from the Whale of a Time package. And I thought that would be perfect for a rainy card. So I'm just going to trim this down a little bit. Now I'm using the largest die from the Sweetly Stitched collection and a piece of Balmy Blue. This piece up with Stampin' Dimensionals. Okay, so I have our new Painted Textures embossing folder, and in my last video I demonstrated the inked embossing folder technique, and I'm going to use that on this card as well. Okay, so these are the ink pads I'm going to use: Balmy Blue, Pacific Point, and Pretty Peacock. And these are all colors that are in the Designer Series paper pattern. So one thing I didn't mention in my last video, and I did have someone ask me about it, is how do you ink up your embossing folders using different ink pads and not contaminating them? So the trick to that is to start with your lightest color. So in this case, it's going to be Balmy Blue, and this embossing folder, it's kind of the same on both sides, where you've got your indentations and then your raised bits. So it doesn't matter on this folder what side you use. So I'm just gonna tap on my Balmy Blue. Isn't this such a pretty blue? And then I'm going to go into my Pacific Point. Because the Balmy Blue is so much lighter than the Pacific Point, you're not going to see any of that Balmy Blue that's transferred to this ink pad. So it's not a concern. So you always want to start with your lightest colors first and work your way up so that you're not contaminating or pulling in some of that ink into your ink pad. So for instance, you wouldn't want to start with the blue and then go into a yellow, because sure enough, you're going to pull some of that blue into your yellow, and that would be bad. And now I'm going in with my Pretty Peacock, and this color is darker than that Pacific Point. So I'm not worried about moving some of that ink onto these ink pads. So that's a little trick I didn't mention in the last video. So now I'm going to mist this lightly with some water. Oops, I accidentally used my Stampin' Mist. Oh well, that's okay. It's just gonna smell pretty. That's because this does smell nice. So I'm gonna fold that down, bring this in. I'm gonna remove plate number 2, and because this is a 3D folder, I only need the gray plate, which is plate number 4. So I'm just going to put that on top and run it through. What kind of magic we've created. Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. Let me zoom out a bit so you can see. Look at that. Oh my goodness, that is so beautiful. So now I'm just going to take my rag and just wipe this embossing folder clean. And I'm going to set this aside to dry. Okay, so I've decided I actually want to mount this on a piece of black, just so it stands out a little bit more on this piece. So I'm just going to measure this rectangle, and it is about 4 1/8 by 2 7/8. So I'm going to cut it at 3 1/8. What did I say that was? 3 1/8 by 4 1/4. So I have a piece of basic black here. So there's my 4 1/4 and 3 1/8. So let's see how that looks. That looks pretty darn perfect to me. my gosh, look at that, you guys. It is so pretty. Okay, I want to tie some more of this paper in. So I'm going to trim this down. We'll say, we'll make it 1 inch. And we'll just do 5. And then I'm just going to flag the end a bit. So I'm going straight up the center and then from the corners to the center, which I'm having a really hard time seeing. Here we go. Let's see how this will look. Yes, I like it. I like it a lot. Listen, considering I didn't have a clue how this was going to turn out, so far I'm pretty happy with it. It's looking so nice. So there's the front of the card done. And now I've got a card to give to my honey when, you know, he makes me extra happy or just for any occasion at all. But I'm really pleased with how that came out, and I love that technique. So that card turned out to be a little more detailed, but that's how I craft. I start stamping and then I come up with different ideas and I end up using different stamp sets. I love using all the different sentiments that we have in all our sets. So I hope you enjoyed watching how my brain works when it comes to stamping. I think that turned out really good. Okay, so for this card, you guys, I'm going to use the Berry Blessings Celebration stamp set and the Sweet Strawberry stamp set. So I'm going to start by stamping this image right here, again onto Whisper White, and I'm going to be coloring it with my Stamp and Blend markers, and I'm switching over to use my black Memento ink pad. That is the ink pad you need to use when you are stamping with our Stamp and Blends, not our Black StazOn. So let's see, I'm gonna stamp it right there. And from the Berry Blessings, I'm going to use You Always Have a Way of Making My Day. And I have been using this stamp so much. It's one of my favorite stamps. I love the sentiment and I love the script on this. So I'm just gonna ink that up. And I'm going to stamp it right here. All right. Let's color those flowers, shall we? What colors am I using? I think these are Granny Apple. Yes, dark and light Granny Apple. So I'm going to start with the light. Shall I zoom in? Let's do that for you. There we go. All right. Color, color, color. And I'm going to use the fine tip just to kind of draw along the stem, just to add a little bit of green. And now my dark Granny Apple, and I'm just literally going boop boop right up the middle, nothing fancy. And I am going to color those in, what color? I will use Daffodil Delight. So I got my light, and my dark. I'm just kind of going on the tips of the flower petals. I'm gonna go back in with my Daffodil Delight, blend that in. So I'm just adding dark Calypso Coral to the center of those flowers. And I'm going to go back in with my dark just to a little bit more to the petal. All right, I am pleased with that. Okay, time to grab a die. Okay, I am bringing in the dies from the Ornate Layers collection, and I'm going to use this one. So I'm just centering it over my sentiment, and see all of this flower is going to hang out. I like to kind of, whoops, go around the whole thing, just so I can kind of use it as a guideline when I'm lining this up afterwards. And then of course inside as well. Okay, so I've just traced my die on there. So let me zoom out just a teeny bit. So you see this bit that's hanging outside of that die? This is what I'm going to be cutting around. Okay, so I'm just going to loosely cut around my flowers, and I will speed this up a little bit for you. Okay, so I'm actually going to trim right around this leaf because that die is going to go underneath it. So you just have to think about what part is not going to be die cut. Okay, so let me show you what I've got done here, you guys. You can see where I've got the outline in the inside of that die. And what I've done is I've cut out the flower and the little bits of the leaves because those are the piece I want to go outside of the die. So as you're cutting, if you need to, just place the die so that you can easily see what part needs to get cut. So you can see that I've got my rectangle pretty much lined up where that pencil line was on the inside. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this through my die cutting machine. So not thinking with this being like such an intricate die, of course the little bit that was in here accidentally got ripped when I took it out of the die. So that's totally fine. That's still going to work fine. So I'm going to take my eraser again and erase the pencil marks. Okay, so I'm just finishing off my card. So I've just added it onto a basic black card base with some of our beautiful berry designer series paper and some cardstock layers, and then a couple bows with our crinkled seam binding. And now I just had the idea to have a little ladybug trinket. So the ladybug is crawling up the stems. Like, seriously? How cute is that? So I'm just putting on a glue dot. I'm gonna grab one of my little ladybugs and plop them right on top. Push them into that glue dot. And look at that. Super cute. Do we need 2 ladybugs? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe that's just excessive. I don't know, but I think that's cute. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be crazy and put on 2 ladybugs, and the main reason is because of just how there's this little too much of a gap there where I just either miscut or had a piece of that pattern fall out that I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. All right, there it is. Isn't that cute? And isn't it so cool how that stamp comes outside of that die? I'm gonna do one more. Okay, I am using this beautiful designer series paper. This paper is from the Flower and Field designer series paper pack. Probably my very favorite of all the designer series papers. And I'm gonna cut this down 5 1/4, oops, by 4, which it already is. And then I have my balmy blue, so I'm gonna cut that down at 5 1/2 and score it at 4 1/4. This is gonna be a fast card. Put on my glue. Look how pretty that is. All right. Okay, I'm going to take the same paper and cut it down at 1 1/2. Also by 4. Okay, so 1 1/2. This one needs to be 2 by 4. So this is going to go on like that, but I'm going to flip it over and use the reverse side. And actually that's too wide. I'm going to cut this down to 1 3/4. There we go. Bringing in my donkeys for this one. I'm going to grab my light and dark smoky slate. I'm going to start with my light, and I'm literally just going to kind of outline Little Miss Donkey here, because I want to keep this card quick and easy. And now I'm going in with the dark, and I'm going to do her hooves and her tail and the little tuft on top of her here, maybe a little bit on the ears, a little bit down here. Okay, I'm gonna go back in with the smoky slate in light, and I'm gonna go back over all that, and I forgot to do that a little bit there. All right, then I'm gonna take my light petal pink, just do this bit. Now, that's all the coloring I'm going to do. No, I'm not. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to the ears. There. Very, very simple. Simple. Promised you a simple card with this technique. I am going to use my layering oval dies. And let me see. Let me see what I want to use. I want to use this one right here. No, I don't, because it's too big. He almost fits in that perfectly, and I don't want him to fit in there perfectly. Gosh darn it. Alright, what do we want? We want his ears sticking out. I think having his ears stick out would be pretty darn cute. Maybe just one ear. Alright, guys. Here we go. Pencil. Going on the inside of the oval die and the outside of the oval die. You know what? You maybe don't even have to do the outside. I always have. Okay, so now I can see where my die is going to be. Find my scissors. Okay, so I am going to cut out Little Miss Donkey's ear right down to the center line. Well, the inside line, I should say. Okay. And into the inside line. It might be less confusing if you don't do the outside line, just do the inside line. Okay. And then over here as well, this little tip of ear is sticking out, so going to the inside line. Just a little bit. And there's a little bit of the tail sticking out. So I'm also going to do cutting right around that little tiny tip. And my clock is dinging because it's 4 o'clock. And I should be figuring out supper, but I'm stamping. I don't have time to figure out supper. I have leftovers. We'll have leftovers tonight. Let's see what we got going on. We're going to put on the die so that the ear is sticking out, and I didn't go down far enough to that inside line. There we go. And then this little bit of ear. There we go. Can you see that little bit of ear sticking out there? So let's run that through the die cutting machine. Now when I remove the die, look at his little ear, his little tip of his ear. This little tail actually is on the inside, so that was okay. So we got the little ears sticking past. Super sweet. I'm going to bring this in and I'm going to cut out one of these little daisies, and that's going to go on my little donkey. I'm just adding some rhinestones just to bling it up a little bit. Look how cute that is. So I always like to add a sentiment to the front of my card. So I'm going to take It's Your Birthday, or no, You're the Best. I'm going to use You're the Best. There's that card finished. Now I did make two other, well, I've made a few of these cards actually. Here's another one that I've made using the Art Gallery stamp set, and this I just inked up the stamp and then spritzed it with water, and then I used my circle dies. So there's that one that I've made. And then I made this one. Isn't that cute? This one was actually for a family member. They just had to put down their 19-year-old kitty who was their baby to them, just like my fur kids are for me. So I definitely wanted to pop a card in the mail. And after I finished making their card, I remembered that their cat was like the brown tiger pattern. So I wanted to make another one that looked like their cat. So I made another one. And so this was just with the sweetly stitched dies and then the cat. So the cat is out of the box. So you can really see all the different ways you can use the out-of-the-box die technique, and you can keep them as fancy-pantsy or as easy-peasy as you want. But either way, you are going to have a lot of fun with this technique, and it might be better to start off with something a little more simple and a straight-edged die versus this one. Give something easier like that one a try before you move on to the ornate edges like that. I hope I've given you lots of inspiration today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and happy stamping.